as the Port Economic Regulator, the Nigerian Shippers Council is responsible for protecting Nigeria's shippers and promoting the development of inland dry ports. Now, as 2022 draws to a close, the Executive Secretary, Mr. Emmanuel Jimmy, joins us today to discuss how the council has fared in 2022. Additionally, he will talk about the council's plans for 2023, as well as shed light on some challenges facing the council and how it intends to lead its activities in the coming year. Interestingly, Mr. Jim, thank you so much. It's good to have you on the show. Compliments of the season. It's really good to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me. Compliments of the season.
Yes, the year 2022 has been an eventful one, no doubt. Can you tell me how the council has fared? Just like I said in my introduction, how did it perform in terms of course, successes and some challenges?
Yeah, once again, thank you so much for having me. 2022 has been a very interesting year. It is a year that somehow, as an agency, we have begun to see an increased buy-in by the stakeholders in the industry as far as our mandate of being Port Economic Regulator is concerned. These mandates is actually been evolving for quite some time now. I'm sure a lot of industry watchers will remember that we started originally as just simply a protector of the interest of shippers, as you said in your intro. But we have been protector of the interest of shippers to the new additional mandate being Port Economic Regulator. There were some challenges at the beginning because I believe there was this misconception and indeed a lot of misunderstanding from among some of the stakeholders about, the real meaning and the perhaps need, to have the Shapers Council turn into an economic regulator. But like I said, in 2022, we have had an increased buy-in by stakeholders of the mandate. And that has helped us in a lot of different ways. For example, it has now allowed us to be better able, to develop some tools, that have allowed us to be able to exercise the mandate in a way that has begun to bear fruits in the industry. We've recorded quite a number of successes. And the reason we're able to do this is because we have been able to secure the collaboration, of sister agencies and of course, critical stakeholders in the industry. So for instance, a number of things we've done. We're able to introduce protection regime in the maritime sector. This was in addition to the fact that because we're initially a consumer protection agency, we needed now to expand our horizon and scope in order to have collaboration, for instance, with the Federal Consumer and Competition Protection Commission. That is an agency that has overall responsibility in protection of consumers. But because we are sector related in the way that we conduct and exercise our mandate, it became necessary for us to get on that cooperation, which has begun, to bear fruit in the industry. We've also been embarking on the promotion and advocacy for the resuscitation of the Nigerian fleet through the activities of the National Fleet Implementation Committee. Now, the Nigerian Shippers Council was given an important initiative of government that will lead ultimately to Nigerians owning their ships. And this is very, very critical in the sense that I've always argued we're not able to rise to the level of a maritime nation unless and until we have Nigerian participation and ownership of fleets that are bearing the Nigerian flag. Now, the Shippers Council was given the mandate, and we've been working with a number of stakeholders to put together some very beautiful initiatives that I'm sure that once those incentives are allowed operation, the Nigerian shipper will now have an opportunity to really, participate more effectively in the shipping industry. Yes, you also mentioned about activities concerning the development of certain critical transport infrastructure, such as the dry ports, and of course, vehicle transport and vehicle transit areas. We also are very involved in the effective supervision of the implementation of the Nigerian Ports Process Manual, the NPPM, and of course, the activities of the Port Standing Task Team. Again, the Nigerian Shippers Council was given the leadership of this particular effort. And in the course of this conversation, we'll be able to see the impact that has had, that is having on the development of the maritime domain. The Shippers Council has continuously been involved in advocacy for digitalization and automation of port processes and operations. Again, in the course of this conversation, we'll be clear why this is a very important initiative. Last but not least, we also have this very robust complaints handling mechanism. We have a complaints unit in the Nigerian Shippers Council, which is actually answerable directly and located in the office of the ES. In other words, my office. This because we undertake that responsibility as a very, very important tool, to deliver on our mandate. Of course, alternative dispute resolution in an environment where there is commercial activity. That is clearly an important tool that we'll be using effectively in order to resolve disputes in the industry. And that has been quite effective. Recently, we were able to secure even greater affirmation of Council's regulatory function by getting the Federal Ministry of Transportation under the leadership of Madam Permanent Secretary, to anchor a town hall meeting where there was re-emphasis, if you like, of the, mandate of the Nigerian Shippers Council as being port economic regulator. So these a couple of the things that we've been able to achieve in the year 2022, and I can re-emphasize that it couldn't have been better. We were able to, again, achieve the declaration of Dala Inland Dry Port as a port of origin and final destination. That's an achievement that we recorded this year. We've signed a memorandum of understanding with the Nigerian Customs Service on the operations of the inland dry port. Again, this was a very, very key tool, to use, because then the inland dry ports are not going to be inland dry ports by definition if they do not have the customs presence in those ports. So again, we went into that memorandum of understanding and already we began operating together with the customs in our dry ports. The last thing that I want to point out, because there are a couple of other very wonderful initiatives that were undertaken in 2022, but I think in the interest of time. So last is we have this collaboration, right, with the Nigerian Export Promotions Council on the establishment and operation of domestic export warehouses. Again, this is an initiative that will definitely help the Nigerian exporter as far as packaging, and as far as standardizing our exports is concerned. Don't forget, not too long ago, we're having instances where a number of Nigerian exports, especially in the agro-allied sector, were being rejected abroad. The initiative of establishing domestic export warehouses, therefore, is to assist the Nigerian exporter with the facilities, the equipment, and the technical know-how that then enables him to be able to export standardized goods abroad, so that we're then able to obviate this challenge of having exports rejected abroad. That's the kind of collaboration that we've been undertaking with several other agencies of government that have some relevance and some bearing on our activities in a way that ultimately has delivered quite well as far as our mandate is concerned.
A very good one and very comprehensive there, Executive Secretary, I must say. But COVID-19 pandemic affected global business. And of course, lingering economic crisis has affected Nigeria as well. Russia and Ukraine crisis, we can go on and on.
Yes.
How well have you coordinated the various interests in the current economic climate?
So the emergence of COVID-19, the virus 2019, actually exposed the weakness of the port economy in Nigeria. Before now, we've had a port system that was anchored on a weak logistic link. We're doing a lot of our processes through manual processes and procedures. And now you would know that is a very inefficient way to conduct business anywhere in the modern world. But that had been the state of the Nigerian port economic situation until the onset of COVID-19. So in a sense, COVID-19 may have come as a curse, but ultimately, I think we've turned it as an opportunity, we use it as a blessing. So what we have now is a situation where the advocacy of the Nigerian Shippers Council to ensure automation and digitalization in the maritime domain has really assisted tremendously in bringing about a much more efficient way of delivering of services in our ports. So for me, I would prefer not to dwell too much on the downsides of COVID-19, if you permit. I'm more concerned and happier to dwell about the opportunity that COVID-19 brought, because then it allowed us and enabled us to have a more creative way of thinking and dealing, with what obviously was an inefficient way of conducting business in the ports anywhere in the world. So I take more of the positives, if you permit, that came out of that particular debacle, and we've used it in a way that has become even more beneficial. As of today, almost all of the stakeholders, whether it is the shipping companies, port terminals, whether you're talking about freight forwarders, indeed, all of the stakeholders, our colleague recognition that the way to go in the 21st century is to automate, is to digitalize. And I'm happy that the Nigerian Shippers Council can claim a little small credit as being part of the advocacy that moved the needle in that direction, because we first observed and took note of the consequences of operating, so to speak, in the 19th century manner, in the 21st century economy. So that for me would be the takeaway from COVID-19 and what ultimately it has done, to the conduct of business in our ports.
Now, one of the notable functions of the council is complaints handling. How have you been handling some of the disputes between service providers, port users, and shipping companies, and of course, eradicating corruption across the port environment?
Sorry, I didn't get that, sorry.
Oh, you didn't get my question. I said
Okay.
One of the notable functions of the council is complaint handling.
Yes.
So how have you been able to address issues between port users, service providers, and corruption?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Oh, tremendous. That's a very important question, and I'm so glad you were able to ask that. I agree with you. Now, that is one of the core functions of the Nigerian Shippers Council. As I indicated earlier, we have a very robust complaint handling mechanism within the Nigerian Shippers Council system. The DEX is reporting to me directly because we attach a lot of importance, to particular initiative, and that's a tool of alternative dispute resolution mechanism, as I indicated earlier. Now, do so in a timely and a very professional manner. And we're doing it without being biased. We're not being unfair in the manner in which we intervene. If you like, let me just acknowledge and note for the benefit of the viewing public, what are the procedures that were put in place. So first and foremost, of course, a complaint would be written, to either my office, or indeed, you take advantage of some of the platforms that are available. So for instance, you can use the official email of the Nigerian Shippers Council. If you permit, maybe I could just read it out for the public. complaints@shipperscouncil.gov.ng. Or indeed, you can use the very effective Port Services Support Portal, the PSSP. That's a web-based tool that is available 24/7. And everyone and anyone in the industry can reach the Nigerian Shippers Council at any time of the day once there is a complaint. And you can be rest assured, in less than 12 hours, in less than 24 hours maximum, you're going to get a response. And the time frame for the resolution of disputes that we have put before us and we have been able to achieve it every single time is a maximum of 7 days. Believe me, if I had the opportunity and the time at the top of my head, I would tell you the number of disputes that we have been able to resolve only within the last few weeks since we're contemplating this interview. Well, we received about 328 complaints, and already 131 of those complaints have actually been resolved. You won't believe it. We've also been able to save the Nigerian shipper over $1 billion in the course of our intervention using the complaints resolution mechanism. So, again, let me use this platform, if you may allow me, to alert the shipping community that there is an agency with the mandate, with the expertise, with the necessary tools that are available to assist in the resolution of disputes in this industry, in a way that you don't even necessarily have to waste too much time taking the court processes that may last sometimes for a lifetime. You know, for a businessman, I mean, time is of the essence. And what the Shippers Council has done is to make sure that we are reducing areas of conflict as much as we can, but at the same time providing a mechanism that is able to resolve issues and matters in a way that the parties themselves are very, very comfortable with the resolutions that have come from our interventions. So this is a very important matter for the Nigerian Shippers Council, and I'm glad you raised this issue. So as I said, take the advantage of these tools that are available, the portals that I've made, that I've announced, or if you don't mind, you can even write directly to the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Shippers Council with your complaint, and believe me, it's not going to take more than 24 hours for you to get a response that is coming from the Nigerian Shippers Council. So again, thanks for this question, but the complaints unit is robust. It's very available. It's very available. And I would really like for the shipping community to try this, take advantage of it and see. And I believe that everybody will be happy at the outcomes of what we're going to be able to deliver once a matter is placed before the Nigerian Shippers Council's attention.
All right, now the Shippers Council has also been the forefront in pushing the establishment of inland dry ports across the country. Let's talk about updates around these two. What is happening across the country with regards to inland dry ports?
So the inland dry ports are a critical trade infrastructure that the Nigerian Shippers Council conceived way back, as far back as 2000. And the reason for the conception of these inland dry ports, first and foremost, was obviously the recognition that the shipping community in this country is spread in all the nooks and crannies of Nigeria. There's always this misconception of people thinking that for you to engage in international trade, particularly by way of export, you have to probably be living around the seaport cities. That's not exactly true. What has happened, therefore, is that the establishment of this inland dry ports has brought shipping closer to the shipping community in all of the nooks and crannies of this nation. That is the first thing we've done with inland dry ports. The second is that we have actually managed to effect a level of decongestion of the seaport, because obviously now that you have other facilities through which business or trade can be carried on, it presents an advantage, an enormous one at that, for the Nigerian businessman, to take advantage of the location of these ports. The question you've asked, which is very key, is what is the update and the level of development? So let me say this. As of today, there are 3 dry ports that have become for us like flagship development as far as our efforts in that direction are concerned. Initially, there was this inland container Nigeria Limited bonded terminal in Kaduna, which was upgraded, to an inland dry port, commissioned to an inland dry port by Mr. President. I believe that will be in 2018. It is already up and running. It is operational. We also now have the Dala inland dry port at our Chiki in Kano. This is the same dry port I alluded to earlier, that not too long ago, the minister actually declared it as a port of origin and port of destination. It is up and ready to be commissioned and will go up in operations any moment. Now it's ready for operations. Same can be said about the Funtua Inland Dry Port in Katsina. That also is achieved, tremendous amount of development, and it is almost getting to the point when we can commission it and have it running. A couple of other dry ports have been in different stages of development. We have the inland dry port at Ibadan. We've gone through the procurement processes, and I'm happy to say now that very soon the concessionaires will be in a position to move on site. As soon as we're able to dot some of the I's and cross some of the T's. Jos, the Hypan dry port in Jos was taken over by the Plateau State government, thankfully. And at the moment, I'm happy to say that over 45% of the development of that dry port is in place as well. So in other words, various levels of development as far as the inland dry ports are concerned. But having said all of that, let me also quickly point to an area that I find a bit surprising. Inland dry ports actually require the participation of these state governments, particularly, for them to be very effective in takeoff. The reason I bring this up is that, first, let's recognize land belongs to the states in our country. That's what the Constitution, that's what the Land Use Act says. And so for you to be able to acquire land of the magnitude that is required to establish an inland dry port, you're not able to do it unless you get the buy-in of a state government. Nearly all of the dry ports that are already functional, for example, the Kaduna inland dry port, it is because the state government actually fully took an interest, participated in the development of infrastructure. For instance, construction of road network, the building of the fence around, the dry port. That is a participation of the state government that recognizes the need to have such an important critical transport infrastructure in that domain. So I'm totally surprised that in some of the areas where we have not been able to move the needle as much as we should, we haven't really gotten the buy-in of the state government. I don't want to name names here, but the fact of the matter is that it is a bit disappointing that we're not receiving the level of cooperation and support that really we should be having as far as the development of these kinds of key critical transport infrastructure is concerned. But to answer your question, I believe that we're moving in the right direction. We're doing well. And hopefully, in the course of the coming years, I'm becoming even more excited and more hopeful that more and more of the state, and indeed the private sector by doing, because let me say this, the inland dry ports are actually developed on the model of a PPP. In other words, this build, operate, and turnover, a model of development, which means that the private sector also must have a buy-in. They need to be incentivized in order for them to participate in the development of this inland dry ports. So those, in my opinion, are these sort of limitations, unfortunately, that we're having at this point in time. But we're doing our level best and trying to get the state governments, especially sensitizing sufficient enough to get them to buy into the concept. And God willing, we'll be able to put more and more of these kinds of infrastructures going forward.
Well, time is fast spent. I'm going to ask you the last two questions. It's going to be a two-in-one question. And first is your comments with regards to the Lekki. Oh, it's a three-in-one then. I know you can handle it. The Lekki deep sea port, what are your expectations when that come on stream, say by first quarter next year? And also the the Nigerian port process manual. What are the updates with regards to that? And your projections?
Oh my God! I hope I had a whole 2 hours to do this. I mean, all right. Well, let me just try it. See, the Lekki deep sea port, I've always said, is a game changer. Okay, I mean, it is the first of its kind in Nigeria. So let's understand that. And there are a couple of beautiful data that I really sometimes like to throw out so people can understand what actually really is happening as far as Lekki and what it brings. by way of impact on the maritime space in our nation. I mean, it is going to be so impactful that I believe it is proper to christen Lekki Deep Sea as one of the miracles that probably would have happened in our time, as far as the maritime space is concerned. But here is some data that I feel, we need to understand. Actually, you see, market studies really indicated, okay, that the demand for containers is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 12.9% by year 2025. Container requirements and the demand for containers and the capacity for them is expected to grow at that rate. Now, given the expansion constraints that we have on the existing facilities, that is at Apapa, WAF, and Tinkan, it is obvious that these two facilities cannot handle the growing demand. So clearly, Lekki was conceived on the basis of the need to bridge that logistics deficit that is existing presently with the ports that we have in our country. Like I said, is the only deep sea port that we'll have in Nigeria as at this point in time. So, like I said, it was actually developed and conceptualized on the basis, to fill what I have described as a significant gap in projected demand and capacity, for existing ports. That's just one. Lekki has the capacity of a monetary value impact of over 360 billion within the concession period. And it is reputed that it will contribute over $200 billion, to the coffers of the governments of this country. In addition, Lekki has the potential to deliver over 100,000 jobs, again within that period that we're looking at. I think an important statistic I enjoy every time I talk about Lekki, is the fact that it is the only port that has a natural draft of 16.5 meters. Now that's not a small figure, and it has about 60 meters of turning space. This will allow Lekki Deep Sea Port to be able to admit this type of ocean-going vessels that are called Panamax. Now, that to me is a development that really must be salutary. I mean, we should be very grateful that it is happening in our time. So Lekki represents for me, an important milestone in the development of our industry. And by the way, if this country is ever going to rise up to the level of being a port, a maritime hub in this West African sub-region, if there's any miracle that can deliver that in record time, it has to be Lekki. So for me, that is the development that we're looking at, and I'm truly excited about it. Now, the Nigerian Shippers Council's role in the operations of Lekki Deep Sea is not any different from the current role that we're playing as port economic regulator, right? We are, as council, we're expected to ensure that the Lekki port functions efficiently and effectively, right, to achieve the desired objective for which the facility was built. Okay, council is expected, therefore, to ensure that the facility renders quality services in line with global best practices. In order to achieve this, we are also empowered by our mandate, to set, monitor, and enforce standards of service delivery, accessibility, and adequacy of those services as well. Now, this will ensure that the operator really does not take advantage of the users of the facility. Last but not least, our role in Lekki. We are going to ensure the moderation of tariffs and charges, and to ensure that these tariffs and charges are tied to services that are rendered at the port. All right. We're going to provide for Lekki guidelines for tariffs and charges, how they will set the minimum and the maximum standards in order to guard against, abuse of monopoly and arbitrariness. So we have an important role to play as far as Lekki is concerned. Last but not least, you have spoken about the port process manual. That is a topic of its own that should take, I think, another 30 minutes. So I don't know how I'm going to do this. Maybe I'm going to have to come back at some point.
Yes, we'll have that. We'll have that in the new year.
That is Yeah, that is a very, very important topic for me. The Nigerian Ports Process Manual is the Bible with which the maritime industry is now regulated. So it has provided the standards, it has provided, the guidelines, it has provided the timelines. So today, because of the operations of the NPPM, which the Nigerian Shippers Council again is leading, because the government has always found in its wisdom that the Nigerian Shippers Council be given these responsibilities. So we lead the implementation of the NPPM, and of course we are now also chairing the port standing task team, which is delivering and helping to monitor the implementation of the process. Right. Now, that is, like I said, a topic of its own. Today, talking about turnaround time, joint boarding of vessels. We're talking about, joint clearance activities in the ports. Now, all of these activities combined have led to a situation where we can say with some amount of modesty the way in which services are being delivered in our ports. So in summary, I will tell you that without the NPPM, I'm not too sure that would have been able to achieve even half of the things that we've been able to do, particularly in the last 1 year. Last but not least, we recently engaged in what is called the Operation Free the Port Access Routes. That is the port standing task team working. Using that platform, we've been able to eliminate over 70 shanties, illegal checkpoints that were bedeviling activities on the roads leading into our ports. So if anybody goes into our Papa today, I'm sure they're able to tell a different story of what used to be in the past. Now, this is due to the operations of the port standing task team using, of course, the tool of the Nigerian Port Process Manual to be able, to deliver on this very laudable objective that we have been pursuing. So, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm happy to come back anytime you want me.
Yes. I like it that there's always a reason for you to come back to update Nigerians on all that is happening in that very important space. I've been speaking to Mr. Emmanuel Jimmy, is the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Shippers Council. Do enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the season too.
Thank you. You too.